toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance.
Welcome, dear souls. So I'm glad that you're here with us on an adventure to very high realms and also to deep places that we love so well in this dear earth of ours. We're going to be venturing into these wonderful ideas from Spiritual Body, Celestial Earth, in which we learned about the Zoroastrians from thousands of years ago, and the Sufis from about 1000 to 1200 AD. So we are already reaching through time to experience the way that people thought, the inspirations that people had many years ago. But as we are going to be asking all of us to venture to do, we will, Azarbash and myself, be updating and opening with all that we've learned in the Sufi tradition, and then all the inspiration of our individual uniquenesses, to think about, well, what is the next step in unfoldment of the studies that we've had? In other words, what is this experience that we've been saying is the thought of wisdom, or the Sventarmitic, we had called it, which is a process that the archangel of the earth gave us an opportunity to reach out and say, yes, I will recognize that I am the son, I am the daughter of the archangel of the earth, and there are things that I can do in relationship to this being and to really to all of the universe, to the earth, that are uniquely mine to contribute and are possible to use in harmony with other beings. So we'll venture into learning more about this, and the true imagination, we're saying, is, in the words of this century, we might say, that's how we interpret Sventarmitic, or the thought of wisdom from way back in the Zoroastrian times. So we're going to be thinking about, well, can we really get more of a definition or more of a feeling for what this true imagination means? And also, where is this happening? We talked before of Barzakh, and we're getting some inkling of it. Took me about 30 years to really get a handle on it, so I hope that we're moving along towards it. And we'll say much more about it today, what it is and what it is not. We are also going to look at how we manifest in this adventure from the higher realms, when our this initiation, beginning of our souls, or say branching out of that soul into manifestation, and then that return trip also that we are on now, which culminates in this idea of the resurrection body. So here we go on our adventure. Something that we came across in our readings of through Spiritual Body was this statement that the soul does not incarnate. Its shadow is projected onto the world of the material, and accidental is another word they use for it, or the world that we know that has, by the way, it deteriorates even. This place of truncated perception is a word that Azarbash likes to use. In other words, there's a certain almost cutting through the usual multidimensional aspect of what the world truly is. And now what we have is the world that we see most of the time, or those that have not pierced through the usual way of seeing to be able to see the depths, but they see it as very shallow, lifeless, not filled with the beautiful light that we've been learning about. So let me say this one more time. Go back to the statement. So the shadow of the soul is projected onto the world of truncated perception and material and accidental things. So let's talk a little bit about this projected idea. And we could also use the idea of a mirror. So imagine a mirror, and then imagine an image in that mirror. Let's say that it's the moon reflected in the mirror. Well, we know that the moon is not really in the mirror. It just shows itself in the mirror. They have a beautiful term for it in the, I guess this is the Sufi tradition from years and years ago. They call it the Ma-Zahir, M-A and then Z-A-H-I-R, where Zahir means the manifestation and Ma means the privileged place. So what we see most of the time is something that's from beyond this manifestation that we usually see, but is reflected upon it. It says sensory matter is the epiphonic place, or the place of epiphany, for the forms created by the soul. They appear in it like in a mirror. If the mirror is broken, the images still subsist. So we can imagine if the moon is reflected in the mirror and the mirror breaks, well, the moon is still there. The moon is still in its multidimensional world, we might say, or it's in the barzakh, but it is not showing anymore in the earth that we know of. It has its, that part of its being is not there anymore, which corresponds to people as their material bodies die. They still have all of the rest of themselves there. Or it's a kind of funny way of comparing it also to last week when we had our call, and if all of a sudden we couldn't see anybody on the screen anymore, but we knew you were still there. It's a very good example of what we're talking about. So why are we so interested in this idea of this projection and about the soul itself? Well, in order to understand our souls, in order to understand our own abilities that we're looking at in this true imagination, we need to look differently than looking at the things of the world. However, the things of the world reflect what this activity is. One example is compassion, the development of compassion, which can be seen, since it is one of the wazifas, wazaif, it also has a multidimensional quality, compassion. But it lives through us and what we do in the world, but it really is done, whatever we accomplish in terms of spiritual activity, spiritual realization, is gathered in and kept and really in the place of the barzakh. So it is an eternal place. It will exist way beyond this body and have an effect also on the world itself, but kind of from the back, from another realm. So Azerbaijan?
Yeah, so consider how we perceive what's in our physical reality. We think that we have a direct experience, like I'm sitting here and I can reach out and touch the table that the computer is on. I can see the image of some of you on the screen. I can hear my voice and so on. But in actuality, what's happening is the sensory input is going into my brain. It's going to the different parts of the brain that have to do with auditory input and visual input and tactile input. And it's integrating all of that, and it's actually constructing a three-dimensional representation of the external world that, for all intents and purposes, seems to be the direct experience, but we never are able to directly experience what's outside of ourselves. It's something that is created in the organ of the brain. So Rabani Ra was talking about how we live in a truncated aspect of reality. Some of you are familiar with the book Flatland, which, if you haven't read it, it's a wonderful book. And it's a story about some beings that are two-dimensional. So they exist on a flat surface and they can move along that flat surface, but they have no awareness that there's a three-dimensional world beyond that surface. And then somebody steps through their world of three-dimensional beings. So all of a sudden, they'll see a circle of one size appear somewhere, and then a bigger circle, let's say, as more of their leg goes through, and now they're walking and it's all of a sudden over there, and they're thinking, this is some magic, I don't know what it is. And then the wise beings realize, well, there must be a higher reality than they're able to perceive with their normal senses, and they begin to have an understanding. So in actuality, we do exist in multiple levels of reality. The mystics have said this. Hazrat Anayat Khan has said the human being is the only being that exists in all the realms of reality or existence. But most of those other levels are dormant, or they're embryonic. They haven't been developed. And so they're basically inaccessible until we learn to awaken ways of experiencing those different realms individually. And then gradually we can learn to develop what I call multimodal consciousness, which is a consciousness of our being existing on multiple levels at the same time, and moreover experiencing what circulates throughout all of those levels. So why is this significant? Well, one, if there was a lot more to you than you are aware of, I would think that most of us would like to begin to discover what that's about. I mean, it belongs to us. But we've been talking in preceding classes about the barzakh, the meeting place, the place where our manifest side connects with the divine side or the transcendent side of being. And we've also talked about the idea of a screen, the interface between the two sides. And I talked in a previous class about there's a limit to how much information can go in either direction through that screen, and that's dependent upon the size of what's brought to it. So what does that mean as far as we're concerned? Well, if we are in a dualistic state of consciousness and we come to that place, there's just a very tiny slice of the totality of our being that's brought to that meeting place. So what can come through is very much limited. We'll have some experience, but it's like a trickle. It would be like if you took your hands and made a little tiny hole like this, and you were trying to look at a magnificent work of art that filled up a whole wall. Well, you'd have trouble really taking in the whole thing. Or if your ears were closed up so you could just hear a tiny bit of sound and you were listening to a beautiful symphony, well, you wouldn't be able to make much sense out of it. When we can awaken to the multidimensional reality of our being and bring this to the barzakh, then a tremendously greater amount is able to come through in both directions. And one more thing I want to say about this, we're talking about creative imagination as being a creative faculty of the soul. And we probably think of it as something that we're doing solely on our end. Okay, I'm closing my eyes and I'm going to think of something I want to imagine and seeing if I can have that image manifest to me. Well, we've talked last time about what's really going on with that as we enter a state of, with an intention, but a receptive openness, not prefiguring what's going to come from it. So something can emerge, but on a deeper level, this faculty of creative imagination is not solely something that belongs to our human manifest side. It's what relates, what comes from the human and the divine side coming together and what emerges from that. So it's a product, this divine creative process. It essentially requires the participation of both sides to be able to come through. Neither side by itself is able to do this. Both sides have to bring this process about. And this is a necessary ingredient in birthing, which the previous series was about the resurrection body. And this series is about living in the resurrection body. Well, we have to be able to develop these components of this process to be able to live from this state of being. So that's what we're going to be exploring some more of.
I found a poem in Hafiz that reminded me of especially each of us as a unique being that's finding our way of using this imagination, using our creativity. It's called This Union. This union you want with the earth and sky. This union we all need with love. A golden wing from God's heart just touched the ground. Now step upon it with your brave sun vows and help our eyes to dance. A lighthearted way of thinking about all these technical ways of thinking. But it brings out that your own joy, your own desire gives you the way, gives you the clues that you need for this whole process. And the idea of the union that we want with all of what we see in the world that really is from the inner, it's a reflection really of our inner experience, a privileged place of manifestation of what our soul really is. And it keeps growing and changing as we love it. And we find a place deep within us where it is. Lately I felt almost like a muscle within myself. It's almost like where the heart is, that as I'm working these, most of them wazifas, most of the time feeling oneness with nature, feeling compassion, and noticing that all these things are really strengthening this muscle. I think some of you probably are having that start to happen too. So it's a very tactile, kinesthetic kind of thing that sometimes I've even thought of as a stud finder. So there's a magnetic quality to it that's saying, yes, this, proceed this way. And we get, as we get intentions, as we get inspirations from within during this studying time we have, if we go ahead and first of all feel where is that coming from. If it's coming from a deep place and it makes us feel really good, then this intention, then we need to try that intention. Go ahead with that and see what comes of it. So that's really developing our intuition and our connection with the deepest parts of ourselves. So these are little clues that I think are really important, especially the joy and especially the love, that are things that we've known all of our lives, but now maybe we're seeing them in a little bit different perspective, getting a much larger picture of just how far that this kind of work can go.
So some of you may be familiar with an idea in mystical Judaism that says that originally there was the perfect, indivisible, divine light, that because God wanted there to be a creation, God hollowed out a vacuum in this light, and then through that vacuum, through that hollow, the light went through that became the basis of creation in the world. But they say that what happened in manifestation, it's as if this perfect light was shattered into pieces. So in some aspects of Judaism, the task is to gather these broken shards of light and put them together and restore them back to their original perfected form. Well, the Sufis talk about two aspects of healing. One is called restoration. It's like returning to the original pristine state. But the other aspect is transformation. It's furthering what there was to start with. So bear with me a bit here. I've talked before about the idea of a hologram that you probably have on your credit card. You're familiar with it. You see this jumble of lines, but if you look at it the right way and the right kind of light is shining on it, a three-dimensional image appears. And the nature of a hologram is you can take a little piece of it and put the light on it, and you'll still see the whole thing. It might not be quite as clear, but the totality is present in all the parts. So one way we could take that is, well, our job is just to restore everything to the way it was before it got messed up. But the Sufis would say that the purpose of existence is awakening of the divine in life, and that brings about a further evolution of everything, including the divine being. So now imagine that everything you encounter, and I've said before that every situation, every place is a potential portal to the sacred or to the divine. So how is that opened up? Well, it's opened up by a particular quality, oftentimes by what you're being challenged in. You're really angry at someone, and so maybe the quality you needed is forgiveness or it's compassion, whatever it might be, but that particular quality is a form of the divine light expressed in a certain way that's now shining on this piece of the totality. And instead of just restoring it to how it was, now it opens it up to something beyond what it was. And it opens up something unique that has to do with that which can only come through you in relationship to whatever it is that you're experiencing. So we have countless opportunities in our life, walking around in the world, to not only bring about restoration, but also to bring about transformation. And all the different divine qualities are like the tools in our medicine bag that enable this process to take place. And these qualities only come to life through us coming to the meeting place with the divine aspect of our being. They're not like just something that we can do or just have come through in one direction.
Right. So if we think about wazifa, and I had one in mind, azim. How do you translate that?
Azim is ecstasy.
Yeah. So that would be good. So azim. So we begin usually with a truncated version. So this is like a little slice, maybe it's, one-dimensional. We have a glory, right? Also glory. Azim. So I'll think of it as glory. And we have associations with the word and everything, but we may say it repetitively, Azim, Azim, and it is calming for us. But there's not a whole lot going on there. But there is using the property we were speaking about, ta'wil, which is taking things that are that are truncated, perhaps, as we said today, and opening them to their full glory. And here's the word glory. That is now something within us, our own imagination, our own way of imagining this, where we're re-establishing that multidimensional quality. As we're opening, as we talked about opening the house of Spenta Almighty, and we also, I wanted to say, can put in the name God if it's easier for us to think of God as our divine one. and we feel this compassion, many different kinds of pulls, especially toward that one divine being that seems to open us. And we continue to allow that as we say it. Every time we feel, when we say Ya Azim, the next time we feel it's a new beginning. Now the work has been done already and it's been transformed. I've been transformed, the word has been transformed. We say it again, Ya Azim. We feel a change, and we are giving our presence to this. This is an important word and idea of the deepest and the most complete part of ourselves to the practice each time that we do it. And saying again, Ya Azim, Ya Azim, Ya Azim. And each time we're calling forth everything that we've learned and all the love in our being, and we're pulling it forth and strengthening that muscle that I was talking about within us, and using that as we're allowing our hearts to open. It becomes a much different practice than we might have done it the way we have done it in the past. So, I would encourage people. So here's a good example of transforming the ways that we've done things before. And here's a great example of being able to do that. And you have your own examples that you could think of. But as Azarbash was saying, we can repeat things in the same ways we've done them before, or we can think of each moment, each opportunity as being this time where we really can make things different, make things enhanced, bring them to their full potentials. Yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm waiting. Is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Yeah, and this relates to the uniqueness of our being. So two of us may be saying the same wazifa, but the experience of that wazifa is completely unique because of our relationship between our manifest self and our divine self, that now is, in this case, the wazifa is the conduit. It's the means of mutual two-way communication, although communication we usually think of as like back and forth, but this is like both sides, every part affecting every bit of the other part constantly and changing the whole thing. So we can, as we do a practice, we can realize and open up to that way that our uniqueness brings forth something each time we say that particular practice, that not only makes that practice different for us compared to someone else doing it, but it's changing that practice in a way that's unique to us. And the result of that change now becomes available to everyone who ever does that practice anytime in the future because of how it's changed through us. So we're participating in this never-ending process of transformation, and it's the divine co-creative process. Once again, it's not just happening from here. It's not just because we get to a certain state of being and now we can do nice and creative things. We have an ever-deepening capacity to unfold what comes from this human divine process in our being with whatever it is that we do. And when we can start to think in that way and experience in that way, it will just dramatically change your way of experiencing everything, even the most mundane circumstances that you find yourself in your life.
So this is a great example of what we call Maza here, the privileged place of manifestation. If we are realizing that each moment that we have is this moment of realization, then, we are opening to that opportunity, and nothing can ever be dull or stale or blah. And, and that creative energy just flows through us, and people can feel it. And the dolphins will come to us. I'm talking to someone in particular that knows to call the dolphins, but every time she gets to the water. And these are not experiences that only certain people can have. This is really, really saving it for everyone. It's, asserting our human divine right to be part of this creation,
And not only right, which it certainly is, but also the fulfillment of our, I'd say, our human divine purpose. I don't have the quote right here, but I was reading a quote from Corbin earlier, and he said something like, it's inconceivable that the outcome of the spiritual journey could be a dissolution of the human into the infinite beyond state of being, because if that were the case, it would lose. There would not be this fulfillment of this uniqueness that is expressed, and this unique way you can say that the divine being has of knowing him herself, that can only take place through us. And then collectively, that's like stage one. But as I say, you also get beyond that what can come from many beings awakening to their higher potentials. And now in this relationship with each other that I've been calling relational unity, where there's multiple lights upon lights operating for a common collective purpose. And now something can arise from that that is just orders of magnitude beyond what any being could do on their own, no matter how realized they are. Even if they're Buddha or Christ or whoever, the possibilities of many beings awakening to the fullness of their human potential. And I think all these great beings were saying something like this. Jesus said, what I've done, you can do and more. And these divine messengers were all exemplars of the fullest possibilities of human existence. And that's why we're here, to each become the fullest possibility of who we are.
So here's something to underline what we were just talking about, I think. Each soul has its own particular activity and perfection, which are an effect and influx of the universal and absolute activity of the soul of the world. So this is talking about each one of you, and allowing that which is our own soul to be making itself evident, first of all, to speaking to us. What is that it is that is my uniqueness? And we have many, but seeing what those are, and just kind of opening that door wide to what that is. Sometimes needing to develop different abilities, like I say, if there's an art ability, then learning watercolors, getting the watercolors, working with them, and maybe working in pair with another teacher, or to be joining a class. And if it is, counseling someone else, maybe it is, we need to go to school and learn different things also to work with it. But it is different. It must be different, because it is your own dharma, your own creation, your own joy. So that soul, as we were speaking about, has its own print. What do we call it? Signature. It's that signature by which it is known. Just like we know our friends, we would know them no matter what they look like and no matter what's going on. That particular signature is yours. and no one else has that. I want to say a little bit more about this image of the soul here. In order to see the image in its absolute reality, and so what we're talking about now is rather than seeing things as projected upon that mirror, seeing things in our surroundings here, but now to see them in the Barzakh itself, one needs what's called the eye of the world beyond. It's a part of the activity of the soul, which corresponds to the true imagination, the visionary and creative faculty. So that part is also, as we could say, our visionary capacity to be able to see things. And there's definitely ways to develop that. Some of you also already are working with that, but a lot of the times you could encourage it through something like writing, where we might sit with a piece of paper and meditate and look within, and maybe it's for a special someone's birthday, or something that you're bringing forth for someone else that you like to share with them. And sometimes it's just coming as a flood of this beautiful understanding and light from within. So giving yourself opportunities for something like that, for writing or for art, for music, for many different ways. But some of the time, we kind of look at ourselves as the one sponsoring this new creative talent. So we kind of encourage our own being to find those times, meet with those people that would encourage that, so that we can unfold these things. And that's kind of all a part of that eye of the world beyond. It can see those things, but also it helps to find ways to bring it onto a piece of paper so that we can encourage and strengthen that part of ourselves. Yeah.
So last time, those of you who were on the call, I shared a practice, but it was after I had to switch to my cell phone, and that didn't get recorded. So I want to start with that practice, and then for those of you who'd like to add some wazaif to the practice, I'll show you how you can add those on. So the practice was done with the movement of the zikr. So to review, you have your head left shoulder down, right shoulder and up. So you're making 3/4 of a circle, and then head goes down to the solar plexus and then up to the heart. So let's just try that motion. Left shoulder, down, right shoulder and up, head down to the heart and up. And so this is a practice of feeling the mutual desire of your human side and your divine side, which even Arby sometimes calls your Rab, R-A-B-B, or personal Lord, or your angel, and your manifest human side, the longing that each side has for the other. That deepest desire, the desire that from the divine side brought about the creation of your soul, and the desire from your human side to just come to the beloved, come so close. And so as the head goes in 3/4 of a circle, feel that you're kind of just taking in the broad expanse of your whole existence in this life, and even before you were born and after you leave this world. So it's just, you're just surveying the whole span of your existence. And then as the head goes down, you feel like the divine is now experiencing you. All that's been gained from the wisdom you've gained from your experiences in manifestation. And as the head goes up, you feel this meeting of the two sides in the heart, this the joy of this reunion of the love of the lover and the beloved coming together. So once again, the head goes in the circle, you're surveying your being through all the stages of your existence. And if you're doing this silently, you can just exhale as you go in the 3/4 of a circle. And as the head goes down, the divine experiencing all that's been gained from your existence, and then continue to inhale back up to the heart, and then just hold just briefly, feel this meeting, and then go again at your own rate. So it's exhaling slowly in the 3/4 of a circle, inhaling down to the solar plexus, and continue to inhale to the heart, and holding just briefly, and then starting the next circle with an exhalation. So do this your own rate. We'll do this for a little while. And then just remain still, and just the feeling that mutual attraction and the fulfillment of the desire of both sides for the other. And now for those of you who would like to try this practice with some waza-if included, the words are going to be on the 3/4 of a circle, ishq baka, ishq, I-S-H-Q, which means the longing or nostalgia, divine nostalgia. Baka, B-A-Q-A, means the resurrection. It's like the having become the fullest expression of the human possibilities, the human potential, fully awakened in all the realms. So each half of this practice now has got a twofold meaning. So the ishvaka from the human side is the longing that we have to experience the divine in the deepest, fullest possible way. And how does that occur? When we really have awakened to the full potential of who we are, baka. And the other meaning of this is the longing of the divine being to experience itself, the unique expression of the divine being that can only in all of the universe take place through you. So it's your longing for the beloved, and in the fullest possible way, but also the beloved's longing for you, ish baka. So it's, and this is done just really quietly but passionately like this. I'll just do the first part. Ish baka. And then just pause. So let's try that. Ish baka. And just feel that mutual longing. And the second half of the practice, as the head goes down, we say Mawjud, M-A-W-J-U-D. Mawjud means existentiation, or it means making God a reality. Mawjud. And then Allah, A-L-L-A-H, as the head comes up to the heart. And Allah here doesn't refer to what Ibn Arabi calls the corporate God of the religions, like the just generic God for everybody. This is your personal way of experiencing God, your Rab, your personal Lord. So in the first part of this, it's the longing for both sides with the to the fullest expression of your being. And then on Mawjud, God has become a reality in you, and from that you are able to experience the divine in this way, and the divine is able to experience you. So it's the culmination and fulfillment of this mutual desire. So putting the two parts together, it's like this. Ish baka Mawjud. Oh, just pause. So let's do this together, and do it along with me at the same rate. Ish baka Mawjud. Allah. Ish baka Mawjud. Allah. And each time, just when you thought this fulfillment couldn't become any more intense, it does become more intense, and closer and closer. Ish baka Mawjud. Allah. 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 Once more. Ish baka Mawjud. Allah. Now silently on the breath, So exhale in the 3/4 of the circle while thinking Ishbaka, and then inhale while silently thinking Mawjud Allah. Pause briefly, then start again, and do it at your own rate. And then without the motion, without the words, just experience the state that you're in. Now I'd like to read you a passage from Ibn Arabi that was written probably about 700 or 800 years ago. One and the same ardent desire is the cause of the manifestation and the cause of the return. He is the source and origin which yearned precisely for this determinate form, you, as an exchange, a permutation between God and creature, ardent desire, compassionate nostalgia, and this encounter exists eternally. And it's saying the two sides, they're not two heterogeneous beings, but one being encountering him herself, a bi-unity. Divine love is the desire of the creature for God. And this, in reality, the being who sighs with nostalgia is at the same time the being toward whom his nostalgia sighs, which is you.
And in this relationship is all that we are looking for in saying that we need to be multidimensional in order to see, to be able to work in this way. So it is the pull of the divine, the touch of the divine that is coaxing us to open. It's like, you forget. Don't. You are that multidimensional being. You are my own partner. Feel how I love you in all the multiple ways. It's reaching from everywhere, loving you from above and below, one side, the other, from inside and outside, from the face of everyone that you see, and from all of nature all around you. I love you so. You must open to all of this. This is your own opportunity, and this is your own way of doing this. No one can do this in the way that you can. There's this beautiful, like the song of Krishna on the flute, asking you, reminding you who you really are. It's so gentle and so grand at the same time. You are so loved. We are so loved together.
And everything in existence is longing for the revelation of the divine that can only come through you. And we are constantly longing to discover the revelation of the divine that it can only come through every single thing that we encounter, whether it's in the seeming external reality or in our inner realm of experience. Everything is longing for that relationship with the other part, the divine, expressed in so many names and forms. Everything is longing for the divine message of Gabriel, and everything is longing for the way that you are the divine messenger for that divine function to be expressed in existence here and beyond this life. And it doesn't get any better than that.
Mm-hmm.